Well, happy Friday, everybody. I'm Nick Slavik. I'm the proprietor of the Nick Slavik Painting and Restoration Company. I'm also the host of this show, Ask a Painter Live. It's a weekly live Facebook show where I use my 24 years of experience as a painter, a restorationist, a craftsman, a colorist, and a decorator to answer any of your questions, whether you're a homeowner or a pro, live here weekly. So, what we have here behind me is my house. We just completed a reasonable restoration on this one here. I'll go through this project a little bit later. I would like to thank the PDCA for the question of the week this week, the Painting and Decorating Contractors of America. We recently partnered with them to bring us some contractor questions. We do randomly get contractor questions, but we want to have a formal place, a formal channel for all the contractor questions to come to. So this is the hashtag Slavic Century Restoration Project here. This is my home. This home is 100 years old this year. The finest gift that I could possibly give a home like this is a restoration by hand. So that's what I did. And this home still has its original siding. Windows have been replaced, but it's still got a lot of original woodwork inside, original floors, everything else. And so 90% of what you see here is all original. It's a beautiful little home. My family has enjoyed it for well over a decade now, and I hope that with this restoration, it'll set it up for the next century for another family, mine included, that will enjoy this and have a lot of great memories in it. So I'll first walk you around here. I'll walk you around the hashtag Slavic Century Restoration Project, kind of show you what we're at here. And then we will go through the contractor question of the week, and then I have a bunch of submissions this week. I put out a call for submissions earlier in the week, and we're going to get to those now. So I will walk you guys around here, flip this guy around. Okay, so we got a basic 3-color paint scheme here. This is a scheme that I devised probably 10 years ago. I feel it's historic. I have my small library of historic color resources, and I combed through to find something that would be appropriate for a craftsman home, but I also wanted to make it unique. And ever since I was probably 14, 15 years old, apprenticing under my father, I really wanted to paint a house orange, and nobody would let me, so I had to paint my own. And this is a custom orange that I came up with. I call it Bohemian Orange, and the trim color is a Sherwin-Williams color. I tried about 2 or 3 different trim colors with it. This one was the most pleasing. And the soffits, if you can see, it's a very subtle sort of design scheme, but I wanted to highlight some of the shadows and stuff that the rafter tails and the open soffits with the beadboard have in it. So I painted that an off-white to sort of bring some there. And then the inner parts of the windows there too, I painted an off-white too to give it a little bit of depth. So this project was started a little while ago. This is my first major exterior project of the season. I coupled this together with safety training, formal OSHA safety training for all of my apprentices. We did restoration training, we did RRP training, and basically, I used it as a way to sort of ease our way into the season. I also experimented with some fine paints of Europe. The first time I've used it, I restored both of my entry doors. I did the full process to gloss oil, all by hand. We restored my deck. I experimented for a half day or so with some deck chemistry with a bunch of help from Christian Militello, professional painting or power washer, and Nick Lagrasso. A bunch of Italian dudes that helped me out with some chemistry for the deck here. So I completely stripped the deck down, took off 14 coats of oil. I have stained my deck at least once a year for the last 7 or 8 years, and this thing had 14 coats of oil on it, and I experimented with stripping it all off. This morning, we sanded it all down, we blew it off, and then we applied some new oil to it. And this, again, in the spirit of experimentation, I tried out Cabot's new offering, the Gold, which is a highly film-forming finish. You can see here the shine on there. It's more of like a varnish for anybody who's worked with that. Years and years ago, Sickens has a product similar to that, and I tried it on here, and with reasonable success. This thing has sort of been an experimentation thing for me for deck process for 7 or 8 years. So we'll let this dry for 24 hours. We'll put another coat on, probably sanding the handrails on the floor in between coats just to make it nice and smooth. I love that smell of fresh oil though, coming off, and that glow that it gets, that perfect mahogany color. And speaking of mahogany, I have 2 solid mahogany screen doors that I took down and I used marine varnish on. This time it was a marine polyurethane. It's recently changed. The company that I normally use, it used to be sort of a linseed oil based product, and it's recently went to what I believe is sort of a man-made alkyd. So I believe they call it polyurethane now to meet the ingredients a little better. So we basically, I washed, I sanded, we scraped, we primed, we caulked, and we applied 2 coats of 3 colors on this one here. And I'll pop this door open and show you my brand new Fine Paints of Europe gloss front door. You can see this guy here. That is as shiny as it gets. I got a few vehicles that aren't even as shiny as that, so that's a really fun thing to use. I'll flip this guy around. Okay, so contractor question of the week here. If you guys have any questions about this restoration, any other projects I go through, I'd be happy to help you out with those. I'll go through the PDCA contractor question of the week. The PDCA is a trade group for all the painters, mainly business owners. I became involved with them a couple years ago. Normally I'm a little opposed to trade groups, but when I showed up, you found yourself surrounded by some of the finest craftspeople in all the country. So, here, let's see if we got some sound issues here. Chris, let me know if the sound is working here. I got a Bluetooth microphone on today that we're trying out, and should be connected. I got both blue lights blinking here. So, Chris, you let me know if we still have no sound here. Okay, the PDCA contractor question of the week here. From Christian Militello, a good friend of mine and a really good business owner, professional power washer from out east. How do you decline a project politely if it's not a good fit for your company? Even though we are a pro power washing company, we have a hard time with decks that have previously coated with semi-transparent water-based stain. We have a process, but it's expensive. How do we deal with this? Okay. For me, one of the biggest parts of a job like that, and we talked about reasonable restoration here, there's a huge gap between I'm doing no prep. Your computer must have been malfunctioning here. Okay, there's a huge gap between what we did on, take restoration. You can basically do no prep to the house and put on 1 coat of Sears Easy Living satin paint, or you can completely take this house down to the bare wood, solidify the wood, and start over. What I did was about 20% back from a full restoration, all the way down to bare wood. And this is what I call a reasonable restoration. This is super expensive. This is morally wrong to do to a house. Somewhere in the middle is where the homeowner wants to pay for that. Now, there's a lot of subjectivity in there in where you do this. So for me, describing my process and describing the outcome perfectly to the homeowner is almost as important, if not more important, than the work you actually do on the house. Christian is a really good painting contractor. Almost all the rest of the people I met at the PDCA the painting is a given. We're all fairly good at our trade. It's just then, how do you manage expectations, or how do you correctly describe what you're going to do so that in the end the homeowner pays you and they're happy, which are 2 very separate things a lot of the time. So when we're talking about decks with a water-based transparent stain, there's no prep. There's a lot of homeowners who don't wash it, don't sand it, don't prep it, and they will just start applying stain over again. And we all know that you're basically just darkening it. There's dead wood fibers, there's dirt in the grain. It's a horrible way to go, and most likely within months, sometimes 3 to 6 months, the coating will come off. There are not many things that I am sort of morally opposed in the painting world. A few of the hot button topics in the past that we've discussed are lacquers, which are basically only good for the contractors at the low grade and really not that great for homeowners. And there's water-based deck coatings, at least the semi-transparent versions. I have not seen one single deck in my experience as a pro since the advent of these water-based transparent stains that have been even approaching what we would consider a standard or just basic deck coating with an oil. And in most cases, these coatings, they don't really penetrate the wood, and you'll see it, they'll actually come up in little flakes, in long chains like that, and it looks just like a real brittle, sort of milky, kind of semi-opaque coating. You don't get the feeling that it soaks in, you don't get the feeling that it protects, you get the feeling like it's just something isn't quite there yet. Now, a lot of, for 20 some years, I've been using any oil product I can get my hand on. It's been really good. A lot of the solid oils, things like that, I believe, at least from feel and performance, that a lot of the companies have stopped putting R&D money or their efforts into solid color oil stains. A lot of it is turning now into water-based. Some companies like Cabot are doing a lot of hybrid stuff now, where it's the oil-water mix. And I've had really good results with all that stuff. The only problem is there's a small amount of wax in those things, and you have to hit a certain recoat time with those if you're going to do semi-solids and things like that. So, Christian, your question, basically what I do is I say, well, we could basically do no prep and stain it, or we can strip your deck all the way down to nothing and start over. This is very difficult, as you know, and from your description, it's an expensive process, and it is. It doesn't take a lot of chemical, it doesn't take a lot of power washing, but a lot of chemical, a lot of materials, but it takes a ton of time. I mean, it could take at least 2 to 3 of my apprentices an entire day of washing, scrubbing, chemically treating, and then probably another half day of sanding to get it down. And even then, there's half of 1% that you just basically have to scrape off with a carbide scraper or a card scraper. Most homeowners don't want to do that. So I usually give my homeowners a span of options. I'll say, well, here's what most homeowners do, and I don't subscribe to that. You called a pro, you're going to get a pro's job on this. Here's what it costs. I give them options. Here's what it costs for me to take this down every bit to bare wood. In my experience, this is what it's the time it's taken me, materials, money, and here's the outcome. And then I say, well, there's something in between where I can basically treat your deck with chemicals to remove most of it. I can chemically brighten your deck. I can wash it. The average size deck for the average size home in my area, way less than 3 or 4 hours to basically treat a deck. What you're going to find is that a lot of the spindles will hold their stain if it's not too degraded, but the tops of the handrails and the floor and the step treads, most of those will come bare just from the UV degrading the coating. So most people find that as a reasonable thing, and because the wood is aged a little bit, if we're doing a semi-transparent or we're doing a semi-solid, a lot of that stuff will blend in really well. And I describe that in depth to the homeowner to say most of the stuff on these spindles is going to stay, but I can get your floor and your handrails with almost no effort down to bare wood. And will you be happy with that? If not, if you want us to strip down all the spindles, then there's this other thing over here. So I sort of put it in their court, and if they have skin in the game and make that decision for me, then it's all copacetic, it's all kosher. You can proceed with whatever they want to do. The thing for me is always reading the technical data sheets and figuring out that if, like my deck you saw with a light kind of cedar oak oil on it, if you dig into the technical data sheets, they're all going to say recoat in 12 to 16 or 12 to 18 months, something like that. A couple of these companies, they'll say, well, you need to recoat it somewhere between 1 year and 4 years. Always it's 1 year then. It's almost never 4 years. If they tell you 1 year, that's the minimum there. So either way, if I take your deck, and I present this to the homeowner, if you, Sam Hardy, is one of my apprentices, you put your phone down, get back to work, say, oh, he must be on lunch. Wondered why he's watching the show here. If you, Sam, if you got any questions, I'm here for you, brother. Okay, if I describe that deck process to them, to say here's what it'll take to completely strip your deck down, we'll use the same process to stain it, or we'll do this reasonable sort of deck restoration, which is probably 20% less than that, but a whole lot less money. It could be 3 times less expensive than that. If you read the technical data sheet, you still have to stain that deck every 12 to 18 months. And in Minnesota, you can't go 18 months. That'll put you every other year in smack dab in a winter. So if you want to keep up like the product says, if you want to maintain some semblance of a warranty, which I wouldn't hang a lot on, you're still going to have to stain it every 12 months anyway. So all this extra work really isn't going to get you a lot else besides aesthetics. it will make the deck look a little more even in color, but it's certainly not going to say, well, if we do 3 times the work, you're not going to get 3 times the life out of the coating. You still have to maintain that interval. So sometimes, Christian, when I talk to my people, I'll say, well, listen, we're going to have to be back here anyway in 12 months, which 50% of the people that I restore decks for call me back the second year to do it. It's in human nature. They're not going to call you back. 4.5 years from now, you're going to get a call, and it's going to be black again, and you're going to have to do the same process. It's human nature. There's no cure. We all know that. So that's sort of how I do it. When I meet with the homeowners, not only am I very upfront about schedule, I'm very upfront about these processes too. And that you can say, well, okay, I'm here on a free estimate. I'm willing to give you any information I have, lead you through this process. I'm going to give you options. You have to have a little skin in the game. You need to be as invested in this process as I am. You give me your input. You tell me what you want. I'll tell you how to get it, and then we agree upon something right in the middle there. And I think managing those expectations is always something that benefits the homeowner. And obviously the principle of never overpromise. That's where most contractors get themselves into trouble. And definitely don't underperform. So you basically, do what's on the estimate, and I always say, well, how can we do 10 to 20% more without breaking the bank? Overperform every time on every job, and then you know that if you go a little bit farther, then it tends to be pretty good. So Christian, hope that answers your question. At least that's how I've found to deal with it. If you've had some ways that you've dealt with it with success too, please share that as well. There's nothing better than hearing from another pro, and from our talks this last PDCA Expo. I really appreciate your input, and thank you for all the help with the power washing stuff that we did too. Okay. Oh, I should thank Todd Hill too, a contractor friend of mine out from Colorado. He actually sent me one of his favorite brushes, the Purdy Nylox, the black nylon, which I have never seen before out here. This is exactly the profile. We got the 3-inch, we got the beaver tail, we got the thick version of the 3-inch, not the sort of thinner trim version. I use the Pro Extras most often. I have never seen the black nylon, but I'm going to use this on our next project here. So thank you, Todd, for that. I will definitely give you some feedback, and yeah, I'll be very interested to try something else out here, especially coming from another pro. And also, thank you to all the Pinturas down in Brazil. Juliano Alcantara, a good friend of mine down there. He leads up a very, very good group of painters down there on social media. And thank you for all the interactions in the recent time here. It's been just a blast to interact with all the craftspeople down in Brazil there. And I'm not that great with the Portuguese yet, but I'm working on it. And the good thing is most of the posts that I'm going over are pictures and videos, so thank you for that very much. Jim Callahan, a good friend of mine, a past apprentice of mine, and also somebody I'll be painting his house this summer. Hopefully I can guilt him into helping me out a little again, just like old times. So he asks, what product do you like for patching holes in wood from a nail gun, etc.? I've tried a few, and even the stainable stuff never looks right. So based on that question, I assume you're talking about interior trim. I've got this question a couple times in the last week here, and everybody has these weird sort of esoteric products that they find, like, yes, hey, this was great, it was stainable. Most of the time what you find is that it was a very light stain and it blended in. I have not yet found a good wood filler that spreads easy, dries quick, is sandable. Sandable is almost as important as stainable, and is stainable. I found things that do some of that stuff better than others. I found years and years ago, I thought I found the holy grail of interior wood fillers. Most of the time, I should side note here, most of the time when I'm asked to do interior wood fillers, it's when dogs scratch up interior fir or pine doors, sometimes oak too, but when they lock a dog in the laundry room, or that's where its kennel is, and it just scratches up at the door, and it's a custom door, or it's alder, and it's a custom profile for the house, they can't get another one, or it's $1,200. I will do wood filler, but it's never as good as the original. Years ago, I thought I found the holy grail. It was something that went on easy, it dried relatively fast, sanded sort of good, and then it actually took stain. And I think it was a combination of, it was a light stain, it was still kind of a medium oak, kind of a Minwax Provincial, give or take. It blended in really well. The only problem was it was a little bit softer than I would have liked. So really, it was almost sort of a wood filler slash wallboard joint compound, something like that. And it really didn't give me a lot of confidence that it was going to stand up, you know, even with normal wear and tear. So, you know, it just seems like you got 3 or 4 levers there between sandable, spreadable, stainable, and hardness. And it seems like every time you move one of those levers, it's sort of UPS guy. Every time you move one of those levers, some other lever moves to it, and there's no free lunch in nature. So you kind of give up one property when you take another. So if you're in the situation where you need some wood filler, you know, keep it to a minimum. Always do tests. In the projects that I've found where, you know, wood ledges or things like that, where the carpenters just say, well, just skim that, sand it nice and just stain it, I stop them and I have them come back and I say, you know, you're the carpenter, we got to have tight joints, either that or get rid of these 2 boards, replace it with 1 board, and I just brief them on the outcome. I brief the homeowner on the outcome, and I let them come to the conclusion. But I always am upfront about, I have not found a wood filler, and I would certainly take suggestions from pros, and when I ask for suggestions, I would hope that it's something that's readily available and nationwide, so we can all find it, because there's a lot of, you know, I've been passed down a lot of these weird formulas for whiting and for other stuff like this, but it's homemade stuff with ingredients that aren't readily available. So if anybody has a readily available filler that can do all 4 of those things, I would love to do some tests in my shop to see if that's true. But I've never found one that will, you know, the theory is you put some wood filler on there, you sand it, you stain it, and it blends in and it goes away. I've never found that. So if somebody has suggestions, I would absolutely love that. Jim, if for puttying wood holes, on interior trim, what I normally do, I assume we're doing a stain and varnish treatment then, and I still use oil varnish. So what I'll normally do is prep all the wood, you know, check it for Mars and stuff from the factory. I will stain it, let it dry overnight, put the first coat of varnish on, let it dry overnight, sand it, stain it, and, sand it, tack rag it off, shop vac it off, and then between the first and the second coat of oil varnish, I will actually putty those holes, you know, burnish them with a rag, make sure they're all tight in the holes, and then I'll put my final coat of varnish over the top of those. And I use oil-based wood putty. You know, I have my little putty kit with about 10 or 12 different colors, and you sort of just mix a little here, mix a little there. More than half the time you can get a pre-mixed putty that's just the right color that'll blend in. Especially when I'm doing pine windows and stuff, you'll find variability between, you know, 2 shades darker, 2 shades lighter. And if you find something in the middle, most of the time it works really well. But I use that stuff only because it's already wood colored. You don't have to go back and stain it. And then if you seal it up real nice with that second coat of varnish, it's not going to attract dust, because it is an oil-based thing and it will stay soft. And it will harden over time, but a long time, and it'll attract a lot of dust and stuff like that. So, Jim, I hope that answers your question. If not, just let me know, and I will modify that for you. Jamie Gurman. Hi, Nick. My question is, we have an exterior door that faces west. The door is a full pane glass door, maybe 6 inches around is the steel. The builder painted the door, and now the paint's peeling off. How would you prep it properly, and how would you avoid this in the future? All my apprentices right now are prepping a brand new built house out in the country for us to do the exterior. And there is somewhere between, I can't remember, 2 and 4 exterior doors just like this, steel doors right from the factory. And I'm going to do a mini training session. I'll broadcast that live next week on how I prep, how I paint those doors. Whatever those things come from the factory, I believe it's called primer if you ask the builder or the manufacturer. It is not primer. It is a horrible finish on the worst versions of those doors, the cheapest doors. I've seen carpenters carry those in from the supply truck in a mist or a rain into the building, and when they get in there, the rain has activated the primer and it comes off with water. So clean those, scuff sand them. You should use a primer on them. I mean, you know, the super anal retentive way to do it is to take it down, prep everything, spray some oil primer on it, spray a really good bonding water-based primer on it, sand that again to smooth, and then either brush or spray the top coats. Ton of work when you're talking about taking off an entry door to a house and then trying to replace it with something or a temporary door. Most of the time when I do my residential repaints, again, you want to be reasonable with it. I could, like with my Fine Paints of Europe door, I probably had about a day and a quarter worth of my own labor into that. And the alternative is, 41 minutes if I do a standard repaint with water-based, satin paint on it. So there's a huge chasm between a flawless, perfect, glossy sprayed finish or a hand finish versus just the standard sort of repaint. If you get the right coatings and the right primers, though, you can get it probably 85% as close to a sprayed finish, right brush, right paint, things like that. So what I would do is, if you have peeling paint on this door, scrape off everything you can. If you want to go the extra step, I have stripped these steel doors in the past if they're fairly unique. I've used chemical strippers, stripped it down to steel, and then used an oil primer, built it back up from there. The easiest way to do this is to get rid of everything that's coming off, sand it. You might find that some more comes off. Prime the entire thing with a water-based bonding primer. You can use a brush too. Just find a cool area in the shade, possibly in the garage, something like that if you want to take it off. If it's cool enough temperature-wise, you can brush some water-based bonding primer on that, tinted slightly to the top coat, and that'll stick. Let it dry overnight, give it a little scuff sand, shop vac it off, tack rag it off, and then 2 coats of an eggshell or a satin or a low luster top coat, something like that, and that should work. But just know that in theory, if somebody put a bad coat of paint on that thing, theoretically all of that could come off at some point. But what I'm sure you're finding is that the lower portion, where either the sun or the water hits it, that's where it's all coming off. The top that's hidden by the eaves or the upper jamb is probably still good. So again, on this continuum of do nothing or paint right over the bad stuff or strip it all down there, you just kind of have to decide where on there that you want to lie in that thing. So Jamie, I hope that helps a lot. Nick Siebold, a friend of mine from St. Benedict out here. I live a home that was built in 1925. It has layers and layers of paint. We did a ton of prep work, washing, scraping, sanding, etc., getting the loose paint off. Some of the paint is on there pretty good. My question is, what can we do to fill the voids in the wood? This is a question, and again, when we're talking about managing expectations or describing exactly what you're going to do for your customer, one of the things that I heavily discuss on my reasonable restorations is that right here, I'll show you a good example. From 20 feet away, and especially from the road, this looks like brand new siding, minus a couple little heaves and stuff in there. But when you get up closer, you can tell that there's been 100 years of painting going on to this house. And some of the original paint is on there, most of it is gone, but there has also been 100 years of things done to this house. And yes, I could have stripped it all down to wood, but to fit the market for this house, to fit my timeline, things like that, this is just as good as any of that. You're still going to have to paint your house in 5 to 7 years anyway, just to freshen that up so it doesn't fade. So what I describe very heavily is that I will get every piece of paint off in a reasonable amount of time, given my timeline here. I will do everything I can to get everything off. Yes, there will be paint that if we push 3 times as hard, if we spent another day, you will get some of that off. But at some point you hit diminishing returns in a thing. When I get all my apprentices on here, I like to have somewhere between 2 and 4 people working on either scraping or prepping or something like that. In about a day to a day and a half, 90% of the stuff, maybe even 90% of the stuff is going to come off. You get a point of diminishing returns where you could spend another day, but that may only get you 3%. You could spend another day that may only get you half a 1%. And then trying to get to that 100% of paint come off, all of a sudden you're taking what in a day you can get 95% of the paint off. In a week you can get 99.6% of the paint off. And somewhere in there you have to say, well, is that extra 8 or 9% of paint worth another 4 man labor days times 5? I mean, you're talking about the equivalent of a month of work for one person just to get an extra 7 to 9% of the paint off. If the homeowner wants that, I'm all for it. I would do every house like that. But most people don't want to pay for that when the rest of the house could be done, the deck could be restored in the time that we could just remove 7% more paint. So I always tell my homeowners the siding is not going to be perfect. It's going to be, there's going to be areas where old paint is there, new paint is there, but we sand it. Now, we don't feather all the edges. I know that's a very big thing with a lot of contractors. They say, well, we feather all the edges of paint. It is so time consuming, and I have not really found that to be a make or break for a lot of paint jobs. Like, yes, if you have a potato chip sticking off there, you failed at scraping, not sanding. All the edges on here, if you can see, and what I normally tell my apprentices is that if you have a piece of siding and the paint sits on top, if you can see the slightest hairline black shadow there, that can be scraped off. If it's tight to the house, then leave it there, and we go back and sand it, and just by the act of normal sanding, you'll round the edge, you'll ease it over like that. But again, at some point you get diminishing returns, and I would much rather spend my time scraping paint off than sanding that paint. The only thing, and how I train my apprentices, the only thing we do when we're sanding is basically getting rid of furry wood, rough wood, things like that. We want to smooth it all out, and the collateral damage is then the paint, and it evens itself out. So I mean, you can see a good example here where it's not going to be perfect. Again, I am not a fan of wood fillers, especially for outside. I've seen a lot of people try to make up for imperfections in their siding by skimming it with fillers, things like that. They always come off, and they are never as good as either the original wood or masonite or whatever substrate it is, and a good coat of paint. So I hope that helps out, Nick. Yeah, just know that, for 100 years people have been doing stuff to this house. And for that reason, I never warranty my my exterior work. I just, as honestly as I can, I tell the homeowners I don't offer a warranty. For sure, the paint manufacturers will offer that, but I would be warranting whatever's happened to this house for 100 years. Now, it sounds like a tough proposition coming from a contractor. I'm not going to offer a warranty, but I look them right in the eye, and over the course of a half an hour or 45 minutes, I describe the entire process. I say, not only am I using a paint that's supposedly self-priming and is one coat coverage and all this other stuff, I put it on by hand, I prime underneath it, and I do 2 coats over the top. You're going to see me on the job site. You're going to see my well-trained craftspeople. There is not a process that I could do that's more invasive to this house besides stripping it all the way down. And when the homeowner understands that, they can understand why you don't warranty that stuff. But they also know that if something goes wrong a couple years from now, or if there's a little area of premature fading, or if 1 or 2 paint chips that could have been chipped off that were just overlooked, that they know they're going to come back. I live in this town. We all live in this town together. They know that they're going to have to see me down at our local festival every year, and they know that even though on paper I may not offer the warranty, I'm there for them. And in the past I've done that as well too. Even when the paint companies won't back up some of their products, they know I've got their back on that stuff. So in the building of the trust with the homeowners is where I sort of let them know. And I think this process is fairly honed. I think I have it. I think I have it good now. I never get the feeling that my homeowners are surprised on the bad side of what it is. I always get the feeling like they're surprised how much effort I put into a house and how appropriate all my apprentices treated them and their house. So that's sort of the side of the ledger that I'd like to be on. So Nick, I appreciate your question, man, and you restored your own house. You feel the pain here. I'm sure you didn't have all my apprentices and all my fancy tools and stuff too, so I give you credit for that. Hats off to you. We'll go through and get some questions here. If you guys have any questions, just type those guys in. Jim, thanks for watching, my friend. Hannah, you as well, frequent watcher. Chris Shank, the great and powerful Chris Shank. Beautiful. I hope you're talking about my house, Chris. Christian, thanks for watching, my friend. Thanks for all the information. Sounds like you guys are having some technology issues over at the PDCA, or maybe Chris just had his headphones plugged in there. Gustavo, thank you for watching, my friend. Sam, I hope you're back getting that house prepped, not still on lunch. You know how I feel about that. Danny, my good friend, thanks for watching. Jen, thank you for watching. My wife is actually going to visit Jen shortly here, so good luck to you guys. Gustavo, can you show me the brush, please, or the box of the brush? Let me grab that for you quick here. Oh, here we go. The Purdy, the Nylox. I'm sure it's showing up backwards on your guys' screen, but this is, let's see, it's a Nylo Scooter. If you're looking for it, I'm sure that's backwards for you guys. It's not helpful. The Nilo Scooter 3-inch. I'm very interested in using this here. This reminds me actually of the brushes that I was using 20 years ago when I was apprenticing under my father. Very traditional sort of feel and look to it. So I'll be very interested if it brings back any memories or if this is a new iteration, something like that. So thanks again, Todd, for that. I really appreciate it. Christian, nice job, Nick. Got to run set up a time lapse for a wash. Talk to you soon. And Christian was talking about going live or doing some time lapse stuff today too on a wash. And he's the pro when it comes to washing. So as soon as you, if you have a time lapse or if you have a live video for us, Christian, we'd love to watch it. See how a pro does some washing. Sarah, thank you for watching. Dave Rushing, I do appreciate it. Chris Shank, what's the color of your house? It's something I researched years ago to try to find something interesting but not crazy. I call it Bohemian Orange. I couldn't come up with a clever name for it. I wanted to name it a Czech word. I'm Czech, Slovak, sort of Bohemian. I was going to find the interesting word in the Czech language for it, but it just got a little too complicated, so I call this one Bohemian Orange. It's a mix of or sort of a compromise of a couple old colors. One of them being an old Hirschfield's. Hirschfield's is a paint and decorating store up here. I took some inspiration for that, and I also, through my old archives, I actually have something that's really cool that's really informed my knowledge of coloring these old houses, is house plan books, mail order house catalogs from the early 1900s. Back in the day, you used to be able to go down to your lumber yard and they would have a physical catalog of houses you could just order, and they would show up on a rail card and you'd put together. Beautiful houses. Most of them look something like this. They were the craftsman, arts and crafts aesthetic, things like that. Farmhouses, 4 squares, things like that. Beautiful, beautiful houses. The good thing is, in these books are colored plates, a lot of them hand colored by artists, to show you what the outside of your house could look like. They actually section out the house, they cut it down by level, and they show you where furniture would be placed in there, and a lot of these are colored. So it's like a time capsule into, here's 1913, here's a house you could order, here's the furniture that would be there, here's the colors we're thinking about, and a lot of these sort of earthy, ochre-y, yellowish, you know, orangish kind of colors were there. So I took a lot of inspiration from that. And you know, I think it's edgy enough where it's interesting, where somebody say, well, of course, you know, Nick's into this stuff, he's got a unique colored house, but it's not shocking. I think it's probably one of the most appropriate color combinations you could do for a house like this. A brand new house, a $400,000 hardy-sided house, you know, maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't fit. Maybe it would look too weird or like a circus tent. But for this, I honestly don't think, you know, it could fit any better. So I was very tempted to change the color this time, you know, me being a painter. But I just think this one is so appropriate, and I hate to lose my orange house. So thank you, Chris. Danny, Nick, the great Roger Coulter uses Timbermate wood filler. You would have to ask him about the qualities you require. I'll have to get in touch with Roger and look up that Timbermate stuff. I'd be very, very interested. Thank you for that suggestion, Danny. So, okay, well, thank you everybody for watching this week. Any questions you have, send them to me. Business owners, entrepreneurs, paint company owners. If you want to talk entrepreneurship, if you want to talk apprenticeship, employees, bookkeeping, marketing, any of that stuff, I'd love to talk that stuff. There's the only thing I like better than that is the actual painting and the coatings. So you guys, you let me know. Next week, I am going to create a treatise on deck finishing for you guys. It is deck finishing season here in Minnesota, and I'm already being stopped on the street to ask questions about that stuff. So thank you all very much. And make sure there's no other questions there. Okay, thanks again. You guys have a good week. We'll see you next week.